Thanks, thanks for joining me today. Um, so, uh, Laura, can you do the next slide, please? So a little bit about me. My name is Alaina Schempp, and I'm a lecturer of film at the University of Birmingham. And most of what I do here is teach various kinds of classes. So I teach introduction to film studies type of classes where we watch movies and then talk about them. But I also teach filmmaking and screenwriting. I'm interested largely in kind of like the creative and sort of creative outputs that students kind of generate. But I'm really interested in this idea of mobile phone storytelling, or really just kind of storytelling, movie storytelling on the cheap. So whether that be a camera phone or even just a small camera that's capable of capturing video images, that's kind of what I'm interested in these days. I'm also really interested in how movies evoke emotions. And that kind of research comes out in the thing that I wrote my PhD about. So that's kind of a little bit about me and why I am here today. Can we get the next slide, please? Okay, so roughly what I'm going to be talking about today is something that you could probably relay to your students when you're thinking about this kind of creative activity. I'm going to be focusing on the 3, or you could say 4, most important stages of production. I might be calling it like video production or film production. I tend to use those things interchangeably. So just be warned. But the 3 or /4 stages of production that I'm going to focus on today is development and pre-production. Production, which is sometimes called principal photography. That's actually when you get the camera out and you get the microphone out and you actually start making images with your movie camera. And then post-production editing. I'm not going to sort of go into detail in any one of these kind of things, but I think it's important to know about and think about when it comes to kind of relaying how one might plan to make a creative project using, say, a camera phone or a low-tech camera of some kind. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, so here's my kind of spiel. More than ever before, young people are communicating in visual images. And to me, this makes a lot of sense because a lot of people think the way that humans tend to think tends to be visual. So if I were to say, describe for you a chocolate cake and it has vanilla cream frosting, you're likely to start to picture or form a picture in your mind about what the cake looks like and potentially imagine what the cake tastes like. Indeed, we often think in images, so it shouldn't come as any surprise that communicating in images can be an effective tool to make ourselves understood to our peers. So just think about the times that you receive a text from someone important to you. Say it's just a heart emoji. I think given the context of your conversation, you'll understand what that heart means, right? So thanks to the accessibility of the internet and telecommunications, graphics and images are shared billions of times per day. Bringing new meaning to a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Okay, can we have the next slide, please? So here's my images of, some of you probably can recognize this is from the movie Citizen Kane. I like to think of filmmaking as a kind of storytelling that involves pictures and sounds. In films, you can know what the characters you can't really know what the characters are on screen or thinking. You have to guess based on the characters' facial expressions or what they say in dialogue, or some action that tells you how they feel. Movies are all about showing, right? And I think this form of expression appeals to so many people because they don't have to find the words to express how they feel. They can just show you how they feel with an image, like the heart emoji that I just expressed. So let me focus on sound for just a bit too, because it's important to just kind of pause and remember that movies aren't just about images, they're also about sounds as well. So I bet no one has ever seen a silent film. And that's because there were never silent films, right? They were always accompanied by some form of sound effects or music, perhaps a live musical accompaniment, and maybe even a barker who would read intertitles, right? So even silent films weren't silent. Movies have sounds as well. So to bring this back to modern times, you might consider meaningful impact of, say, a loud alarm clock ringing or I don't know if you can hear that traffic noise that just happened. Sorry about that. We're on a very busy street here on 31 Pritchett's. Say like an alarm, a loud alarm clock ringing, or the quiet movement of waves on a beach, right? Sounds carry different meanings too. Can we have the next slide, please? So what I want to focus on today is how we can get young people to recognize the power that they have in their pockets. I'm looking for a way to give young people the basic tools that they need to tell a story with sounds and pictures. It can be anything they dream up, an event that they experience that they want to share, or it can be entirely fictional, just a story that they want to express in images and sounds. So how does one do this? For further context, I should say that I teach undergraduates and master's level students how to write and make movies. So it does help to start with a prompt, but usually I give them free range to dream up their own story and remind them of the parameters of the project. So there might be like a set running time of say 3 to 5 minutes. And obviously it's going to be limited to the resources around them. So it's probably not the best time to dream up that epic outer space opera that they've been kicking around, but a story that they can tell using the resources around them would be really useful. And in the context of the My Birmingham Story, the prompts are all around you. I think Laura listed off quite a few of them. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, work with a prompt, but a prompt, can really help you. So this might be related to some aspect or another of a lesson that you might be focusing on, or it could be a particular theme, say a holiday is coming around that's really important. It could be about a time of year. That's why you see an image of some winter trees before you covered in snow, whatever you like. After establishing a prompt, I would have them write down their ideas and keep a record of them in a diary or a journal. And this is going to be a really important piece of the puzzle because movies tend to always be about the planning of the film, the movie, rather than just the sort of principal photography part of it where you just turn the camera on and start shooting. So in that journal or diary, they should start to make a list of visual images that spring to their mind based on that theme. They might note down a few lines of dialogue or maybe some poetry that they've been kicking around, maybe some song lyrics if they're interested in that, possibly sort of sound or auditory cues like the ones that I mentioned just a minute ago, the alarm clock ringing or waves crashing, perhaps traffic noises and sounds that are meaningful to them. And it can be as unstructured or as structured as they want. So just kind of a list is absolutely fine. And once they have a list of images in their journal, I would have them try to see the movie in their head. So try to get them to imagine the films and the sounds in order that makes sense to them. So how does the movie open? In other words, like what's the initial image that you see when the movie starts? How does the movie close? So what's the final image that we're left with? How does that arrangement of each image generate, or sound rather, each image or sound generate a kind of meaning? Okay, so how is it sort of, they might kind of doodle the relationships that these kind of images, when juxtaposed, kind of prompt. Can we have the next slide, please? Sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, so apologies for the coughing. Okay, so the next image is about gathering materials. After your students or pupils have dreamt up in their film in their heads and possibly written it down in their journals, they're almost ready to start filming. They just need a little guidance on techniques and strategies that can help them produce their ideas into actual moving pictures and sounds. Next slide, please. Right, so now I just want to talk a little bit about the kind of basics, the camera basics that students tend to like to know about before they actually turn the camera on. So the following slides are just going to show you a couple of visual images demonstrating like what you actually get. I'm not sure that people can actually see me. Can somebody give me an auditory signal that they can actually see my video right now? Because I'm going to demonstrate this with my phone.
Yeah,
Yes, we can see you.
You can also see me. Okay, great. So I'm going to be using my phone to demonstrate how you actually produce these kinds of camera movements and such. just with say like a camera phone, but you could also do this with just a regular digital camera. Okay, so you really can do this in an incredibly low tech scenario. So I use my iPhone here. Any camera phone will do, or any video or moving image camera will work just as well. You can use a tripod like the one I have here, or not. This one cost about 20 pounds on the internet. And basically I just use it for filming little projects. So you can see it's called a tripod because it has 3 legs. All right, so basically we've got ourselves a setup, right? And say you want to do a kind of movement of some kind of object that you're filming, whether it be a person or a prop or a location, right? You can see moving up or down would be like this. Panning from side to side would be like this. And then a tilt, and this is why I get my camera out to explain it, is kind of when you bend it down or you bend it up, okay? So you can tilt up or tilt down, and then you can also track, and that means to physically move the camera this way or that way. So getting the kind of language down for the student is going to be really important, because this is the kind of point at which cinematography becomes an art form for the student, right? So they can really start to play with the camera and not just sort of like film a thing, whatever their subject is, where say they want to film like their mother's handbag, and just from their own, vantage point, it looks like the same in every shot. They might want to say get a low angle shot and maybe point it up or something like that. Can we have the next slide, please? So that last slide was talking about camera movements, and this slide is talking about angles. So I just mentioned like kind of a low angle shot would be when it's underneath the figure that you're photographing. Say if I'm the figure photographed, and a high angle would obviously be from above. So you can see the examples there. I hope you recognize some of them. The top one is from one of the Avengers movies, right? I always ask my students which Avengers movie is that, and there's always someone who knows. But there you've got Thor and Captain America, and it's a high angle lens, right? So you can see that it's something is looking down at them, and it's making them look small in the frame, and it must be quite dangerous. The next example underneath that's from a movie called 12 Monkeys. And this is a scene where Bruce Willis is kind of trapped in a psych ward. And so we've got what's called actually a Dutch angle. So it's when you tilt the camera this way. So you tilt the camera this way, right? And you get a kind of strange angle, which sort of is in keeping with the fact that he's trapped in a psych ward. And then, of course, you've got a low angle shot in the bottom example, and that's from Pulp Fiction, with the 2 principal characters kind of being looked up at, right, from the trunk of a vehicle, or from the boot, I guess you say here, right, the boot of a car. So that could be a kind of another tool in the student's pocket to use with their cameras. Can we go to the next slide? Here we have some examples from the movie Indiana Jones demonstrating different kinds of camera shots. So you could get all of these are possibilities, right? I mean, so the example that I gave where someone might be filming a story about their mother, maybe they want to film a close-up of her handbag, and so they would make it a close-up. You can see the close-up example that I've got here is Indiana Jones, and it's a close-up of his face. That's the bottom right-hand side. That's what we call close-up. On the left-hand side, just next to that one, is what we would call a full shot or a full body shot. And that's because you can see all of Indy's body, right? The whole thing. And there he is kind of teaching his history class. And then on top of that, you've got an example of an extreme long shot. So when you're instructing people on what kinds of shots are available to them, it can often really help to sort of have examples from popular movies and television that they've seen, so they can immediately make connections, right? I mean, many of you have probably seen this film and you know exactly what that shot is at the top. That's when the Ark of the Covenant is being stored in that giant storage house, and we kind of pull back and there's this extreme long shot of the box being put away amongst all the other boxes. So, you know, I'm not telling anybody that they should be standing on parking garages to get films, but that would be one way that you could do an extreme long shot, is just to stand very, very far away from your subject and turn the camera on. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So now I just want to take a departure and get a little bit more terminology. I guess this might be a little bit more confusing, but some people might actually encounter this if they study or teach English literature. So talking about sound now, it's really a good it's a good point at which to introduce this concept of the diegesis, or what we know as the story world. So even if you're making a movie about your mom, there is a kind of diegesis within that little video that you're making. So it's important to kind of think about the world in which you're creating, even if you are just telling a story about someone you know. So it makes sense to most students to just get that concept in their head right away, because that kind of nails home the principle of this isn't just about the images that I'm showing you, it's also about the sounds, right? Because sounds are everywhere in our world. I mean, we just heard one, or maybe you did, I'm not sure how good my microphone is, picking up the sounds of Pritchett's Avenue here in Edgbaston. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Right, so there on your screen should be a picture of a microphone, and I made this slide really just to kind of cue that I would take my camera out again and show you how this hooks up with my camera phone. But I do this not because I want you to go out and buy things, but just because I want you to recognize how cheap and easy and accessible technology is today, where you can actually record like pretty good quality things with some pretty low-tech stuff, most of which you already own, and some of which you might encourage them to acquire, or your schools to acquire. So I bought these, the set of lapel microphones on Amazon for about 20 pounds. And this is what they look like. They come with, there are two of them, and they're wireless. So I've just hooked it up with this little thing right here. And when I turn the video recorder on, it will record sound, not from the microphone in my phone, but it will record sound from the little microphone. And if you're doing an interview and you don't mind seeing the mic, you can just hook it up to someone's lapel like that. And that's why it's called a lapel mic. It's also called a lavalier mic sometimes. If you want to turn it into a conventional sort of interviewing situation, I like to use a pencil. So you could just kind of hold it like that. Works pretty well. Or you could point it at someone else if you wanted to interview someone else without having to have your hand in their face. And so there's lots of kind of low-tech sort of solutions to making all kinds of qualities of films. So I only pause there to kind of hope that people do consider teaching sound alongside teaching the making of moving images. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, so why does diegesis matter when thinking about sound? Well, we tend to identify two different types of sounds in movies. There's the diegetic sound, right? So that would be the sound within the story world. And then there's the non-diegetic sound, and that might be music and sounds that the characters within the film can't hear. So if the filmmaker wants to, for instance, kind of overlay the soundscape with some kind of music, and it's just kind of meant to be decorative, then that would be what we call non-diegetic sound, because it's sound that's not actually in the story world. But say you're making that kind of profile movie about your mom, and you want to capture her making a delicious breakfast, and she's cooking the bacon on a frying pan, and you want to hear that sound, that quintessential sound of like the popping of the grease right on the frying pan. You might actually record that, right, by getting your pencil out. Don't stand too close to the frying pan, and record that sound, right, so that you can use it later. And that would be used as kind of diegetic sound. So it's sound that accompanies the visual image. Again, you could do it just by pointing your camera phone or the microphone on your camera, but it might be more difficult if you're, say, having to do it over a hot frying pan. So that's kind of why microphones tend to be really useful in certain circumstances, because they alleviate the need to have to do things twice, right? You can record the image of it, of the frying pan, while recording the sound from a different source. Okay, so that brings me to kind of the final thing I wanted to talk about. Can we have the next slide, please? Right, so this is about assemblage, or what's also called the editing stage. So this is generally the final stage of production. Excuse me. And I'm not going to dwell too much on this because it's pretty technical, but um, I don't I guess I should say it's not so technical that it should be scary to anybody to put something on an editor, right? There are free editing softwares that are really, really easy to use nowadays. You just kind of drag and drop the images and the sounds that you want, and then you can make them shorter or longer as you want them, and you can plop and move them around and stuff. So it's using a nonlinear editor like CapCut or iMovie. I've never tried OpenShot, but I've heard really good things about it. At the University of Birmingham, we have a subscription to Adobe Premiere Pro, which works really well. Some other universities invest in Final Cut. And so your schools might invest in their own particular editor. It doesn't really matter what kind of editor your school has invested in, or none, right? Because CapCut is free. So there are lots of free ones actually out there to use. And so that is one of the reasons why why I'm here today, which is the fact that movies are virtually free to make. And so we want to see what people come up with now that they have the tools to make movies. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for listening to me drone on, and sorry about the coughing.
Fab, amazing. Thank you, Alaina. So I think what would be great now is if everybody could just change their name to whether they work in a community setting or a school setting, and then we can kind of start talking about it more specifically for your setting. So you can ask some questions if you've got some kind of thoughts in your head about what you want to do, or if you're worried about barriers and things, we can have that conversation now. Harjinder's got his hand up.
Yeah. Sorry to break the silence. Okay. Now, I was just going to ask, is this something, Alaina, that you could probably do face to face in a sort of like a workshop, face to face with the staff members or a community group?
Yeah, thanks, Harjinder. Absolutely. I mean, you could probably tell that I'm not too good at doing it in webcam scenario. I'm used to actually instructing over the shoulder sort of teaching, where I actually teach the student, what button to push to make it turn on. So I think in person and in live context, this could be really, really a powerful way to kind of deliver the message.
Well, yeah, because the communities that we reach out to or support are families, and majority of them, English is not their first language, so visual plays a massive part, and non-verbal communication is 80% of all that. And visually, that can paint a, like I said, picture paints 1,000, blah blah blah. And of course, everybody so like connects with movies or scenarios and stuff like that, and that's one way of communicating. And then to say, well, hang on, this is brilliant. Can we now make a, like you said, what Laura said, make another story about your community or about something that, and then we just sort of like, come in and they bring that all together, and then, you go through the process of how they bring it alive, as you say. That's what I was going for.
Yeah. Can I just weigh in there as well, and Harjinder, and just say, I guess today is also about you feeling empowered as a community worker to do that yourself as well, that the skills that you've learned today you can share with the community
Oh yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I won't be far behind Carl. I'll be there. But that's what it. But I learned best through other people, like we're doing now today, and the experts and sort of like, and we had. It's a bit like saying like this would work, but why it won't work? Because most people got their phone, but they don't use it to the full capacity. Apart from when they want to video silly things like, well, silly things. But
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are
that's what
probably
it's about. It's
already
about having fun. Sorry, Alaina, to cut you off.
No, that's absolutely fine. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No, just say that's what, but people, they know how to use. You see, another part of that English being a barrier, but also in terms of quite a few community members, well, maybe more, they're not digitally, proficient, because the other factor is also there's a poverty deficit in terms of they haven't got enough data, don't have electricity, don't even have a phone that's fully charged up, and so I can go on and on and on and on and on. But this is the way forward, because just talking off track now, most of people on working tax credit are being moved to universal credit. So what I'm saying is this is a good way for them to learn about digital technology, as well as having fun, as well as maybe learning a skill as well. So, which will hopefully, with everything being online, job applications, jobs and so forth, so he supports them. And that's what I was coming through to in terms of his, because we're trying to run ESOL classes down at our Ladywood Hub, and maybe to mix it up to get people engaged, that would be quite good, I think.
Yeah, I think this would be a really nice way of kind of practicing your English skills, because it's telling a story, but that it's your story. So
Yeah.
you've kind of written it yourself, and then you get to turn it into kind of a piece of art that you can keep and show to people as kind of an
You read my
example.
mind, Laura. You read my mind.
Abby's got her hand up, so we'll go to you next, Abby.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I work in Hall Green School, and I would like to know more about the My Birmingham Story project, and how things are going to be compiled, and where is it going to go, what's it going to do? Because I think my kids would be really, really excited in offering film. Thank you very much, Alaina, for your insights about it. But I'd just like to tell them what they're contributing to, please.
Amazing. I think I'm going to pass this question on to Kyle, because this is his kind of project. So
Yeah, all right. Hi, Abby. Yeah, so what we do in the Literacy Trust in Birmingham, obviously we've got our projects that we're doing all the time, but then every 3 months or so, or every term, we do a call out campaign. And at the moment, between now and March, it's now and the end of March, it's My Birmingham Story. So I'll put the website link in the chat in a second, but it's basically we're asking for people to submit stories about their connection to Birmingham, either in a written or a film format. And when we've done that previously, we've done it just as sort of talking heads, someone standing in front of camera and saying, hello, my name is this person, and we wanted to change that to make that slightly more interesting for them to be involved. And also to allow it to be done by people who maybe don't want to show their face. There's a lot of teenagers I know are in that category. So yeah, the stories that they submit will be, if they like, profiled by us on our social media and online. And we're also going to take what they submit and make a bit of a montage video as well of the ones that have been submitted. And I think, a campaign like this requires quite a lot of engagement from people like you to kind of push them to do it, etc. So I don't think there's going to be a huge number of people in Birmingham doing it, but the ones that we do, that means that we'll be able to profile in a big way, and they can be central to the campaign. And yeah, the story can be anything, any kind of event or moment that connects them to Birmingham. And there's also a free worksheet resource on the website to help them plan their story as well. Great.
Bob, I think I can't. Helen, I think it's you.
Hiya. I've got some experience of collecting stories. I was doing a job where we participated in Birmingham Council's Future Parks Accelerator project, which involved a lot of collecting of stories to do with people's relationship with their local environment. And what I found was not so great about the actual collecting of the stories was really good, and we had some amazing stories that came from that. We didn't do any videos, but we had like some people did it through drawings, and then we had longer written things. Some people wrote poetry. Was that really, although in some of the council's publications the work was then featured, that we didn't really get how it had then informed anything else going forward. So I wondered, I mean, where I don't really know anything about the National Literary Trust in terms of, like you're saying, you have campaigns. So what is the purpose of the campaign?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So
and
I
just
mean, go on, carry
no,
on.
I was just going to say, and one of the things that I felt was a shame about it is that all these different people that actually discovered that they had a really shared passion for the environment, that we didn't have any occasion where they all came together and then thought about how they could bring all these amazing ideas to actually do the practical stuff that they were all saying they wanted to see within Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds frustrating. I'd say this is a slightly different type of campaign in that we're not asking for political ideas or engagement. What we do in Birmingham is we try and raise reading for pleasure, and we try and create opportunities for storytelling as a way to create empathy and community cohesion. Those are our two big objectives. So I'm seeing the video making as a means to telling the story almost for its own sake, for the pleasure of telling the story, rather than to affect change or to affect, so it's not as if it needs that kind of next step. However, yeah, we do want to profile those stories and celebrate the stories that have been shared. And also, we're not just going to disappear in that once you're on our newsletter, I don't know if you are on our newsletter currently, but you'll see that we've got campaigns like this all year round. So yeah, we do, as I say, one every 3 months. And we also have regular opportunities for kind of author events and free books, for example. So if young people have got engaged with the storytelling, then they can get engaged again and continue to use those skills. That's what we're sort of aiming for, and gradually to help them develop a love of storytelling generally. Yeah.
That sounds great. It's just popped into my head. Like, would you be happy for stories to maybe not be in English for so at Cushing Community Garden we've got lots of people that, I mean, they've got very limited vocabulary. So it would be
I'd be delighted.
Mm.
I'd be absolutely, I'd be over the moon. And I'm sure we could put some money towards putting subtitle translations as well if that were to happen.
Okay. And similarly with like if I live quite, I've done some work with Sense. So if any of the deafblind community were wanting to, okay.
Incredible. And that would
Thanks.
be it's so interesting to have your expertise in working with that community as well. And using some of the techniques Alaina said today in BSL context would be, yeah, a really interesting piece of work.
Amazing. So, does anybody have any questions before we move on to a little like kind of task that Alaina's thought of? Does anybody have any questions about kind of specific barriers that they're thinking they might face in getting this done? So whether that be things like, I don't know, like school cameras or bringing phones into school, things like that. If anybody's got any questions to do with that we can kind of help work through now. We'll have another chance, I think, at the end to have a little bit more of a conversation. Oh, Katie. Oh, we can't hear you. Give her a second and see. I think she must be plugging a microphone in or something. But yes, so if you've got any questions about how that might work in terms of like the actual practicalities of doing it, I'm sure Alaina will be happy to answer some questions on that as well.
Katie, you can put it in the chat as well if you can't get the microphone working, and we'll read it out.
Yes, use it as an investment. Get a lapel mic. You look very professional at all of your meetings from now on. Fab. We'll just let Katie type it out and then we'll move on.
As she's typing, since you brought up sound, I also just want to emphasize that you don't need to invest in anything extra, right? I don't bring this out to kind of scare people. I mention it only to emphasize like that it is important to capture sound, but if people were making videos, it would be wonderful to just emphasize with them the kinds of sounds that are in their world so that they could share those sounds with everyone else in their video. So for instance, like you could just use the microphone that's already on your phone, right? So your microphone on the iPhone's at the bottom, and you just hold it closely to the source of the sound. So that could be mother's cooking, or that could be, you know, the sound of a dog barking, or whatever, traffic. You don't really need to have an investment in anything more than, say, like the what I imagine is already in the pockets of many people, which is a kind of, you know, camera phone.
Amazing. So, oh, Helen had another question. If you've come across any particularly good bits of kit, Alaina, brands, etc., would you let us know what those are?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't come here sponsored by Apple by any means. I happen to have an iPhone out of habit, but it really doesn't matter what kind of phone you use. It doesn't matter what kind of digital camera you use. These are so off brand, they don't even say what brand they are. These are literally just the first thing that pops up when you Google wireless microphone on Amazon. And you can take a picture of that if you need to. But yeah, they're called wireless microphone, and they come with a jack that looks like that. So this one hooks up to an iPhone. If you're getting one for your particular camera, make sure it has the right jack, because this is for, that's the Apple proprietary jack. So definitely worry about that. But price-wise, you're looking at something like 20 pounds. There are more expensive microphones out there, but that is absolutely like fine to use just a 20-pound mic. I've tested this before, it works great.
Amazing. So Katie's put her question in the chat, and I'm going to read it out because I think some of this, Kai, will be relevant to you as well. So we're a South Birmingham school in Northfield. Is there any funding for cameras? We only have Kindles and they aren't the best quality. I have a project in mind of the street beneath our feet where children can narrate their own stories. They are writing about what is underneath their feet. And also a question about when the deadline is, and does everyone gather together at the end to kind of have a screening, basically?
Hey, great question. Both two questions there, Katie. Thank you. Number one, first thing to say is that sounds like an amazing project. And it sounds like a really, really lovely idea. We don't have funding available, unfortunately, to support with cameras. So just a couple of ideas of ways around that. Number one, to say if the cameras are not very good quality, that's hopefully not necessarily too big a problem, because anything that the young people can put together will work for this. There's also, when we've been speaking to secondary schools, obviously we can say, you know, most of your young people will have smartphones, and that might be the case with parents. If you wanted to do a kind of intergenerational version of that, that could be a nice workaround, to try and access that kit that is already there in the community. So yeah, sorry that we don't, I can't help in more ways than that, but hopefully one of those might work. And your second question, so the deadline is, we put it just before the end of March, which is March 22nd, I believe, or it might be 24th, but anyway, it's towards the end of March. It's not a hard deadline, in the sense that if you miss that deadline, we'll obviously still welcome what is done. But we wanted to use that so that we can make that into a montage that will be released in early April. And will there be an event at the end? I haven't organized one yet, just because this is the first time we've done a big call out for My Birmingham Story, and I just don't know how many people are gonna do it. But if we get enough people to do an event, I'd love to put one on, and we'll definitely do that. It's just that, yeah, if I book a venue now and then only 2 videos come in, I'll look a bit silly. So if we do an event, it will be sort of mid-April time. Once we've got a chance to get all the videos in, and then yeah, we'll try and work potentially with the Library of Birmingham we've done central events of that kind there before.
Amazing. And Dean's had a good idea as well. If parents have any old phones that they don't mind kind of bringing in for the day for kids to use in the sessions.
Yeah, old are a great resource there. I mean, the technology we're talking about has been around for over 20 years. So literally a camera that's 20 years old is fine.
Amazing. So we've got about 15 minutes left of the session, and I know that you kind of had a little idea, Alaina, of what kind of getting the ideas flowing about how to start off the projects and as people go away. So I'll let you introduce that before we get on.
Yeah, so originally I had a thought to do a dream up your own prompt, but as we've already kind of got a rudimentary prompt to do with My Birmingham Story, I'm going to move on to hitting home the point that the best way, and you're all teachers, you know this, the best way to learn something is just do it yourself, right? So I would challenge you, if you're interested in delivering this kind of messaging to students, try doing a story yourself. It can be a story about your mom, or it can be about your dog, or it can be about yourself, like that one time that you had to stand in the grocery store and you were really angry about it, or whatever you want, right? Pick a story. Use a kind of basic method of development, pre-production, production, and post-production, and just set out for yourself a list of images that you would film that speaks to that theme. You can say, write down what you want to say, or you can say nothing. You can record yourself talking just off the cuff, or you can write down a speech that you want to perform, or you can leave it kind of dialogueless, so to speak. But try to create your own video. And you'll see just how easy and difficult it kind of is, right? I mean, there are kinds of things about the dreaming up that can be very simple, and then you put it into practice and it's a little bit more difficult. But once you actually do the project and you have, you know, like a 60-second or a minute and a half video that you've made, you'll see that it is an achievable task, and it could be something really fun to show people, like, look, I made this. And then once you have that, you know, then I think you'll be more prepared to kind of deliver this kind of messaging to pupils or students. Would anybody like to just take like a minute to kind of dream up what kind of story they might tell if they were given this assignment? And then maybe we could have a couple of volunteers to share what you've dreamed up. Is that okay? Okay, so I'll time you out. I'll give you 60 seconds, and then we'll have some volunteers.
Thanks for coming, Katie. Yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Okay, you have about 20 more seconds. There you go. That's the clock. Okay, would anybody like to share what they kind of dreamed up that they might make a very short video about?
I can go first and kick it
Please
off
do.
if you like. So kind of cheating a little bit because I have filmed a My Birmingham Story before, but like kind of in the old style of just like my face. So I'd actually quite like to do this in this way around. But when I was much younger, I don't know if any of you guys remember the TV show Brum, with the little car that was from Birmingham, and he used to have adventures around the city. And me and my dad were out one day when I think it was when I was still in nursery even, and we saw them filming Brum outside in the city centre. And I was really excited because I love the TV show, and the little car like beeped his horn and like waved his little door at me. So I think what I would really like to go around and do is kind of take a picture of Brum like from the internet and like take it to iconic bits in Birmingham that it will have filmed at when I was watching it when I was little.
It's really cute. And you can imagine how visual that would be, because you would have like possibly like a cutout of the car setting. It's great. There's a hand up.
Hi. I think that I might like to, because so my background is in environmental education, and I moved to Birmingham from London, and one of the things that's been great for me is that there's so much wildlife in Birmingham that's closer to the centre. So like I live in Selly Oak, um, and around me are foxes, badgers, like all kinds of birds. When if I was in central, where I was living in London, which was probably not in terms of how far I am from the centre of Birmingham, was not that different. You might have gotten foxes, but you wouldn't have got badgers. You're unlikely to have had hedgehogs. So there's just a lot more wildlife that you can observe. And I'd quite like to do something from the point of view of the wildlife, so that you can see why those wildlife are choosing that bit of Birmingham as their home. And some of it is quite funny. So, for example, in Selly Oak Park this week, I took some photos of a squirrel eating crocuses, right? And I then collected up the half-eaten petals, right, which I'm pressing. So I've been collecting stories in different ways, but the squirrels in Selly Oak Park spend quite a lot of their time jumping in and out of the rubbish bins, eating the fast food that we get loads of in Selly Oak because we've got so many fast food retailers because of the student population. And I just think like it kind of, so it would reflect on some of the negative things as well as the positive, that like this is the environment that we're in. So like they can eat crocuses in spring, but also they can eat chips out the bin.
Bit of social commentary in that one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to just, I love the method of gathering images as you go, right? The gathering images stage of production kind of in a sense never has to end, because you can be taking pictures and videos your whole life, right? And they might be useful in a different story that you want to tell later on, or they might be, you know, something that you want to reuse in a different story. And so it's important, I think, to kind of hit home that message that the gathering material stage is really just having fun with your camera, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, a planned sort of shoot where you go out and you get the footage in a day or two. Like you could just be gathering it all the time and putting it in some kind of library of your stuff, just what's saved on your phone, for instance.
Can I just add quickly as well that this doesn't need to be a hypothetical activity. You know, this project is open to adults as well as young people. So if you want to make a film for the campaign, or even if you want to make one as a model for the young people or the adults that you work with, great. It would be much better than something abstract coming from us if you do it. Yeah, and we'd love to see it.
Amazing. So we've got 5 minutes left. I don't know if anybody else would like to share their idea before we kind of wrap up. Amazing. So in terms of like getting involved, we've kind of answered these questions as we've gone along, but just a reminder, like Kyle's put the link in the chat to the webpage, and on the webpage you can find some really helpful guides. So one's a filming guide, which would be really easy to kind of share with your kind of communities and young people. And then there's another guide, which is all about structuring your story as well. So both of those are really helpful if you want to do a bit of work of getting like the stories out of the young people that you're working with and the communities that you're working with before you go into filming it. So kind of that pre-production stage, as Alaina was talking about earlier. And yeah, so the kind of deadline is the 22nd of March, but like Kyle said, it's not a firm deadline. We'll take them afterwards. I think it's a really nice kind of thing it's been added to for about 4 years now. So since the hub started, so hopefully it will just keep getting added to as we kind of go along. Oh, that's a good idea, Helen.
Yeah, so Helen's offering to potentially share some kits. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think sites like FreeCycle as well, especially if you're looking for I'm sure people will have little bits of mics and stuff like that they're not using anymore. Sounds like a really good idea. Fabulous. Well, thank you all for your time today. I don't have anything else to add. I don't know, Alaina or Kyle, if you've got anything else you want to add last thing.
I'll just put my email address if anybody wants to contact me and ask me more questions. Happy to do it. I don't actually publish it online anywhere, so if you Google me, you might have a hard time to find it. So there's my email address, a.p.schempp with 2 P's at bham.ac.uk. Please make a note of that, and feel free to email me if you have any follow-up questions, or if you want me to share kind of materials, slides and things. I'm happy to do that too.
And yeah, as I say, if you lose the link, you just Google Literacy Trust My Birmingham Story, and that'll take you to the page. And it does have free planning resources, worksheets that you can just print and go with, that might be helpful. Some guidance on making films, if you want to share that around, although not as in depth as we've had today. And also there's media consent on there. So if you are submitting stories for this campaign, obviously it's important to get media consent explicitly from the young people or community you're working with. So there's some pro formas for you to do that if you would like to participate. And I want to read out what Belinda suggested as the story. We went on a treasure hunt around the city centre with some of our group at the weekend. They loved exploring the statues and fountains. It would be lovely to capture some of their stories they made up about the statues, sound of the water splashing, if we had captured their interactions at the time. And I think that's great because going to a place might be a great starting point if you're doing this with a group. Some of you, like Dean, I know, have a place that's quite interesting already where the young people are at the centre. But some of you might want to go further afield. I don't know.
Thanks. Lovely. Well,
I'd
thank
love
you
a
very much.
story about one of those statues.
Mm.
Make
Yeah,
up your own.
Lovely. Well, thank you so
Thank you
much
so much for having me. This was really fun.